Today is Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. My name is Edna Sussman. I'm a reference librarian here at the Hollow Hills Community Library. We're interviewing Robert M. Edelson, a World War II Army veteran, as part of our Veterans Testimonial Project and in collaboration with the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. Thank you so much, Bob, for your service and for participating in our project today. Bob, where and when were you born?
Brooklyn, New York, August 1st, 1925.
Well, happy belated birthday. Who were your parents and what were their names and occupations?
My father was Edward Edelson. He was U.S. born, and he was he did estimating on contracting work.
Like building, estimating
Yes,
building?
structural steel.
And your mom?
My mother was a housewife. She was born in Russia and came over as a 4-month-old infant.
Really? With her family?
With her, with her mother.
How, and what was her name?
Jean Edelson.
Did you have any siblings?
My brother, Alan Edelson.
Was he in the military too?
No, he was 12 years younger than I. He still is 12 years.
Good, okay. So what were you doing before you entered the service?
I was studying civil engineering at City College in New York.
Wow. And did you finish the degree?
I got 1 year under my belt before I was drafted.
Oh, really? Wow. So you were drafted, and you didn't get to choose the branch, right? The Army drafted you?
Well, I was in the Reserve Officers Training Corps program, ROTC, but that didn't do me much good.
Why?
After I was drafted, I got one stripe instead of being an ordinary private. I was a private first class.
Oh, so you moved up a little bit initially. Right. That's because you were in college when they drafted you?
Yes.
So does that hold for later on too, that you can become an officer still? Because you had some college under your belt, or no?
They could. You never know how the Army decided who was going to go where.
Oh.
It was a matter of need.
Oh, I see. So what year were you drafted in?
September of 1943.
What happened when you departed for training camp and during your early days of training?
My mother cried.
I bet. I bet. Wow. So how old were you? 19?
18.
18. And your brother was only 6.
He was a kid.
Wow. So where did they send you for basic training?
First, I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey to be processed to get our uniforms. Then we were put on trains, a train anyway, and sent to Fort Benning, Georgia, near Atlanta. That was an experience in itself.
Why is that?
Took 20 hours to get to Atlanta.
Really?
Because every time a troop train going the other way, heading overseas, they'd pull us off the track on the siding until they went by.
Oh, must have taken twice as long as it normally would.
That's why it took 22 hours.
Wow.
And it got rather cold for some reason in September.
In September, yeah.
And somebody learned how to turn the heat on. And then it got so hot we had to turn the heat off. Then it would get too cold and we'd have to turn it on.
Awful. Wow. Well, once you got to
Fort Benning.
Yeah. Was that your basic training where you started basic training?
Yes.
How long were you there?
I was there for 6 weeks, and we got a furlough for Christmas.
Oh, what did you learn there? What was the basic training like?
Well, each week was a different cell of operation. 1 week might be rifles training on the range, marching, all sorts of activities.
And military procedures and things like that you had to learn?
Yeah, military courtesies, things like that. And the total was supposed to be 13 weeks of infantry basic. But when I went home on this leave, I got the flu when I was home, and they put me in the Army hospital at Mitchell Field, and I was there for 10 days. So when I got back, they said, You have to start all over again with a new unit because you missed a whole week.
Wow.
So that became 19 weeks of basic training.
Still in Fort Benning?
It's still in Fort Benning. And I was in the ASTP program,
What is that?
Army Specialized Training.
Oh,
The intent of the training, which had started maybe a year or two earlier, was to take people who are qualified engineers or training in engineering, get basic training. Why did it have to be infantry? We found out later. And then they would send you to a college. One GI with 10 co-eds wasn't a bad deal, but I never got that break.
oh, where did they send you? What?
And the last week of training, they were painting over the bumpers where it said ASCP and then the number of the truck. And I said, what's going on? He says, there's no more ASTP. You're in the infantry now. So they screwed me on one end.
Yeah.
I wanted to go into the Air Corps,
Oh,
but my folks wouldn't sign me in because I was set up to go to college, they thought.
oh,
Anyway, at that point, they loaded us on train and sent us to Camp Livingston, Louisiana. Why? Because there was a training division there that they had just shipped all of the privates and overseas, and we reformed the division. So they kept all the non-commissioned officers and they retrained us. And that was a lucky break because I was ready to be sent overseas fully trained, but now I was really trained.
so it postponed the overseas
To
a bit.
postpone the overseas, and we'll see when I get further on how important that was. So one day we were out on the company street, and the first sergeant said, anybody wants to volunteer for mortars, squad, or the machine guns, fall out and go to the day room. Now, I'd been told by my uncle, who was in the service for a year before me, never volunteer for anything except if you can get into the mortar squad.
You're kidding?
I'll explain why.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was the first one at the desk. Looked up at me and said, mortars and machine guns? I said, mortars. That was a lucky deal because it was very specialized. There were only 2 mortar squads and 2 mortars themselves in an infantry company. A mortar is a tube, just a steel tube about this long, into a base plate, and you take the round, which was about this long, weighed about 6 pounds, pull the pin out, slide it, let it go, and it would slide into the barrel and hit a pin on the bottom and explode. You could adjust the height, the angle.
But it didn't explode near you.
No,
It
it
was projected out?
projected by a puffy sound,
I see.
and then you could fire it as far as a mile.
Really?
Yeah, and
How is it propelled from the,
it had a cartridge that was ignited everything. And they put different little gel. There were little gel portions that were fastened to the fins depending on the range that you're going to be firing.
oh, I see.
And that was in a card. It would say so many yards. You put so many gels in, and somebody had to be the spotter, and the squad leader, like I was, would be on top of a hill. We were able to fire from behind the hill. That was the advantage of being in the mortar squad.
You were a little safer?
Sure.
Wow.
So I would, with binoculars, I would scan the area. The target was identified, like maybe a crossroads. You fire it, see where it landed. Then you'd make a correction, X number of yards to the right, X number of yards forward or backward.
How did you know how did you know
You
that?
get to learn how to judge. The binoculars told you left and right, they had
Oh.
bars on it. But the range was a matter of first guess. When you really got good, if you're in familiar territory, as soon as you get this first round and the second round, you could say fire for effect, and they would fire maybe 6 or 7 rounds, one after the other. And because the mortar is not very well set in the ground, it would just move a little bit each way, so it would cover an area.
Bigger area?
Yeah, and they're very destructive of personnel.
What are you shooting at?
Well,
people?
when you first set up in combat, you'd be given a target that you might not be able to see. It might have to fire at night, so you zero in that this is course road so-and-so, and there's an aiming stake, which you set up using a compass. And then the range you guess at, and then you find out what's correct. And you have a sight that's mounted on the side of the tube. There's a bubble for elevation and a bubble for cross level. And that's what makes the difference between a mortar operator and an ordinary rifleman. They don't know how to get it all set on target, on the stake, with the bubbles properly set. And because it's very tricky, you have too little adjustments.
Wow.
And you can go crazy. You can spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes and never get everything level.
Wow.
But I had, like 6 months of training, got to where I could take that from the ground, set up the two little bipods, set the range, and have everything all perfect in 15 seconds.
Really?
And that's what made a big difference when I was joined that division.
So it's much more involved than just shooting a rifle?
Yeah.
Much more?
Yes.
More detailed
More
and
yeah.
accurate? Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. I never knew. Do you recall your instructors in training? What were they like?
They were decent guys. They were not like you see in the movies.
Okay. So you did get specialized training then in
Yes.
infantry?
The mortar squad.
Mortar squad. How was it adapting to military life, including the physical regimen, barracks, food, and social life, if there was any?
Well, the first night after we were in Fort Dix, there were tears in some of the bunks. And I had the funny thought, my mother can't help me anymore.
19 years old you were, you said?
18.
18, sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
You suddenly realize this is it.
This is it. You're an adult all of a sudden.
You're just a number.
Yeah, yeah. How was the food, and did you sleep in barracks in basic, or what was that like?
Well, in Fort Dix, they had regular two-story barracks. When we got to Fort Benning, they had little huts with 8 men, eight cots, and a pot-bellied stove. And each guy was rotated to be the guy that starts the fire in the morning.
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, somebody had to do it.
Oh, it's early.
Yeah.
They had to get up earlier?
You stoke the fire, but then you have to shake it up and get it working.
I see.
Yeah.
Was there any kind of social life going on? Or?
No.
No. So this was in 43, and you were there 3
I was there
months?
until just after the first of the year.
So then you
And then
got
we were shipped to Camp Livingston,
Where's that?
Louisiana,
How long were you there?
about 6 months.
What did you do there? More specialized training, or?
We were trained as units.
Oh.
Training means you get to know who your officers are, who your non-coms are, what your duties are. You go out in the field and you set it. They had a lot of drills where you'd be fighting a hidden enemy or whatever. And then you had marches where you had to march overnight. Or we did one 25-mile hike, and then that was acceptable. Took 8 hours, but then they had one of those, what they call a forced march on a hot day, and you had to go 9 miles in 2 hours. That's 4.5 miles an hour. But we worked up to that kind of capability.
Now, those marching and the 25-mile thing, how did you,
Every 50 minutes, you would stop for 10 minutes.
was that just to get you all in shape, or?
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
absolutely.
Wow.
Then we went on overnight problems, and we got lost. The lieutenant got lost on the road and out in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
and we marched all night before we found where we were.
This
And
was in, where was it again?
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
The maneuvers for the Army
Did you have
were
any
all in
food?
We're in Camp Livingston area.
Oh, okay. Did you have food with you when you did these
Only when
walks?
we got to the food truck,
Oh,
we had chocolate bars. They call them chocolate bars. They were hard as rocks. They were called D-rations.
What
But
about,
when we knew we were going to be without food, we carry C rations, which were canned foods. And they were pretty good. You had to heat them up to make it decent.
how did you heat them up? How,
Start a fire.
oh, just, or there on the road?
No, well, we were never on a road that often.
Oh,
We were walking in the middle of nowhere.
wow, that's quite a extensive training.
Well, it brought our bodies into condition. That was very, very important to build up your strength.
So then, this January, for 3 months you were there?
6.
6 months, that's right, I'm sorry. And then, where were you sent?
Then we were loaded on trains, sleeper trains, believe it or not, and sent up to Camp Meade, Maryland, where they checked all our equipment and issued us equipment that we were going to need because we were destined for the European theater, so they knew what we were going to be going to.
Did you know that at the time? You were
We
gonna
don't
be-
know anything. We just, you do what you're told today and you find out tomorrow what happens.
So you didn't know you were going to be sent abroad until...
Well, yes, so we knew we were being sent overseas. But
At that time, but not initially?
as soon as they loaded us on trains, we
Trains.
knew we were going to the East Coast, we were going to go to Europe,
Wow,
which was better than Pacific. I would have died from heat rash.
really? Huh. I don't know which is, there's neither one was that safe as it was. I mean,
Well, the Japanese were no bargain, but the Germans were more controlled, more difficult to fight.
so then you were...
So then we went from Camp Meade, Maryland, to a little temporary fort called Camp Shanks on the Hudson River, just north of New York City, for a few days. Got an overnight pass to go back to visit my folks and go back up there. Then they put us on ferries,
Where were your folks, in New York?
Woodmere, New York.
Uh-huh. They put you on ferries?
Put us on
sorry?
ferries, took us downriver on the Hudson River, and loaded us on the ship that was going to take us to Europe, which happened to be a converted cruise liner, the Mauritania,
Oh, wow.
sister ship of the Lusitania and the Aquitania. And I had wonderful place to sleep. They sent me
good.
into the mess hall and they said, here's a hammock hanging from the pipes.
Are you kidding? Didn't they have beds or rooms or?
They didn't have enough.
Oh.
They had,
So the whole trip you had your hammock?
and I didn't hang it from the cable. I tried it and my back was bent.
Sure.
So I laid it out flat on the table in the mess hall and that's where I slept.
You kidding? That's
Yeah.
pretty hard though. Oh,
I was pretty hard by then.
wow. How many people on that ship? Do you know how many?
Hundreds.
Hundreds.
And then the ship, being very fast, did not require a convoy. And they sent us over without a convoy because it was so fast the subs couldn't keep up with us.
Really?
And they would zigzag all across the ocean. 6 days we were in Liverpool on the west coast of England. Offloaded us, sent us to a replacement depot. We were what was called fresh meat.
Oh, gosh. Oh, wow.
So anyway, we were there a few days, and then they loaded us on another set of trains, pulled the shades down, took us to Southampton, which is on the south border of the British Isle, and put us on a landing ship infantry, which was a large boxing kind of a weapon
Ship?
vessel.
Vessel.
And next day, we went across the channel. We got to, of all places, the Normandy Beach. But now we're 3 months later than D-Day,
Oh,
and I was so happy.
yeah, I bet.
And we had to go over the side of the ship.
You had to what? I'm sorry?
We had to climb down the side of the ship on cargo nets into the little landing craft, which normally would go to the beach and you'd get all soaking wet. They put us right up against floating docks.
Oh, nice.
So then we got out and I'm looking around, looking up at those emplacements, realizing how possible it must have been to cross that beach and live. And we went up between the dunes, had little
Rivets?
rivulets, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Marched up through that for about 3 miles, went through a little town that used to be a town called Isigny, Isigny.
That was in France,
It was in France, but it was leveled. Through that, and we told the pitch tents, we had pup tents. We each carried half of a tent,
Really?
little tents.
So 2 guys would share a tent?
Normally 2 guys, but it was cold and damp, so we took a 3rd guy, put his tent on the bottom, and then the 3 of us would take turns being the guy in the middle overnight.
That's the warmest spot? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we were there for about another 3 days, and suddenly the announcement came to turn in your rifles and load on these trucks. Now, these rifles, we had zeroed them in. We knew exactly how to correct everything on them. Rumors started, you're going to be MPs.
Oh,
That's called a guardhouse rumor. So they drove us around to the Cherbourg Peninsula, which is right around the corner, up to the airport at Cherbourg, and we camped out on the grass in the ramp areas. And they shuttled us to Italy on C-47s.
why did you have to turn in your rifles?
Weight. Each rifle weighed about 10 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And with 21 guys or so and on board that saved 210 pounds of weight.
But didn't you need your weapons with you?
As soon as we got to Italy, they loaded us on trucks, took us to a temporary tent camp, throw your stuff on the bunks and fall out. We were taken by trucks to a rifle range,
Oh,
given new rifles to clean and aim.
oh,
And the rifle range in the States was about 600 yards long. Here they didn't have that kind of space in Italy, so we had to line it up on a 1,000-inch range, which is around 30 yards. But at least you got it better than pointing off in this direction.
yeah.
And they said, you're going to be sent right up to the front because there's a desperate battle going on. The Germans are attacking, counterattacking 4 times, 5 times. There were terrible losses, and they need you guys. And everybody's eyes
Yeah.
opened wide. You couldn't believe it, but then cooler heads prevailed. That night, we had a flooding rain so bad that half the tents were underwater. Mine was in dry land, luckily. And they said they changed their minds. They're pulling the division out, sending it to a rest area in Montecatini,
Your division out?
the one that was going to join.
Ah,
We're not a division, we were just
Okay.
loose limbed guys.
okay.
Excuse me. So finally, after a day or 2, the remnants of the division came back, and I found out later why I was called in to show how I could set up a mortar, because one whole squad was wiped out.
Oh,
Normally, the mortar squads were not as exposed, but whatever happened, they were having hand-to-hand combat on top of that hill. It was called Mount Battaglia.
Battaglia.
And as it turned out, the guys came in, they didn't talk, we didn't ask questions. And then after another few days, when they got back to feeling like human beings again, I guess, the lieutenant in charge of the platoon called all the replacements to the backyard, and he had a mortar there. And he said, okay, you guys, anybody know how to set up a mortar? And I stayed back.
You stood back.
I stood back because I knew the guys couldn't do it. And they would work and adjust. And finally, after 5 minutes, he said, next. And when he got to me, 17 seconds,
Wow.
he looked at me. He said, you're a temporary sergeant. You're in charge of one squad.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
So it paid off.
Why? Is that a good thing? Then you're,
Mortar squad is the way to go. It's the safest place in a platoon, rifle platoon.
really?
A rifle platoon consists of 3 squads of 12 riflemen, plus a weapons platoon, which is 3 machine guns with ammo bearers, and used to be 3 mortars, but they may change it and put 2 mortars and 8 guys carrying mortars, because you could fire those mortars in 5 minutes. You could fire off all your ammunition. Yeah, we didn't have jeeps like the bigger mortars that were behind us.
Oh,
So anyway, so that's how I got to be a sergeant.
wow. But it
Was
wasn't temporary, or
It
was
was
it?
temporary, but it became more permanent when, after I got sick, I found out they gave me the full rank and the pay.
How soon after that is that what happened when you got sick?
Well, first, we had to spend, we got, let's see, where's one of these dates? To explain how I got there, I left for overseas duty on September 18th, 43, and I arrived in England on September 25th, 44, both of them were 44. Departed from England on October 18th, arrived in France on D-Day, on Normandy on October 25th, departed France by air October 29th.
This is all 44, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Arrived in Italy on October 29th, the same day. We flew over the Alps with no heat in the back of a plane that was set up for paratroopers,
How many were on that plane?
about 21.
Uh-huh.
And then we got to Italy. Yeah, you arrived in Pisa on the 20th. No, I'm sorry. October 29th, we arrived in Italy. And then I told you the rest. From there, we went to the rifle range.
Oh, yeah. It's-
Later, after I was ill, I left Italy on May 10th, where the war had already ended in Italy.
So you were in Italy through that whole time, from October to May?
I was in Italy from October 29th to May of 45. Yeah.
Okay. And fighting and doing,
Well, the kind of a battle, the divisions had pushed British on the right, Fifth Army on the left.
that was
It
you?
was part of our unit. And they just ran out of people, and they ran out of material, and they ran out of steam,
Who, the enemy?
both.
Oh,
And it was, the Apennine Mountains run between Florence and the Po River Valley along a road that goes between them called Highway 65. And we ended up where the front line was set up while I was there was 30 miles south of Bologna. And after that, the ground was flat. But here, it was these rolling hills. And that was what was so difficult when they were fighting up their way up there. The Germans would always be on the high ground until the Americans pushed them off, and then they go into the next one and the next one.
wow.
And they ended up trying to keep us from being on the high ground at Mount Battaglia, and they fought desperately. I read descriptions in the book that I got about how there was hand-to-hand combat. The Germans were coming into the operations, the command posts, and it was a horrible situation. That's when they called for help, and they needed bodies. And luckily, from then on, things quieted down. But we were the 350th Regiment, and there was a 349th and the 351st. Triangular setup in the Army. Everything was threes. There'd be 2 regiments on line and 1 back in reserve.
I see.
Being
How big is a regiment? How many?
Regiment is up at 3 battalions, and each battalion has 3 companies.
Oh, so it's pretty big.
Yeah, they're
That was a lot of
quite
people.
large, yeah. And the beauty of being in the water squad was we had to set up behind the hill. The riflemen had to spend nights in foxholes on the forward slope, occupying that area. And from then on, we had harassing fire. Artillery was constantly passing overhead both ways.
Wow.
And quickly we got to know what the sound was.
Really?
And any new guys that came up was scared to death and said, no, that's outgoing.
Oh,
And
you
that's
could
it.
tell
You
what
could
was
tell by the
outgoing
sound.
and incoming? Really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then there was more exposure to be in reserve than to be on the front line, because they always fired over the hills. And the guys in the back would hide in caves. And
Were you scared? I mean, it's pretty
occasionally,
nerve-wracking.
but you could get to the point where you're fatalist, you had no control over artillery. They had something very clever. At night, when it was overcast sky and no moon, they would set up big searchlights all along the front.
The enemy or
No,
us?
We
We.
point them at the clouds and it would light up the whole area.
Oh, so
Very
they had
clever.
nowhere to hide.
Right.
Oh,
And then there
smart.
were constant patrols that would be sent out at night on the forward slope down into no man's land, so-called. We got away with until finally they said, why the hell did the mortar squads not go out? They should have to go out. So they said, okay, you guys, here's your weapons. You got to go out this night on an ambush patrol.
Oh, wow.
So we followed, we divided, one mortar squad went with the sergeant, I went with the lieutenant, and a couple of guys with me,
How many in each group, you think?
about 8.
Uh-huh. And what was your purpose?
Theoretically, we were supposed to set up an ambush in case any German patrols would come along.
I see.
But we didn't know till later. The intelligence section of the division decided, send word up to the guys that are on patrol that night, try to get a couple of prisoners for us to
Oh,
interview.
my gosh. Really? Did you? You didn't
The
find...
radio went bad on the lieutenant,
Oh,
but the other unit got the word and they started toward this farmhouse, which we used to fire mortars at all the time. It was down in the bottom of the hills. And there were machine guns in the cellar opened up on them. Luckily, they didn't get anybody because they stayed back. But mortars started being fired at us
from the house?
from behind the house. And I looked for a shell hole, and me and another guy dove into a shell hole and pulled our helmets over our ears. The first feeling is that the whole sky is, everything is going to come into your foxhole. So it was very exciting for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the lieutenant said, the hell with this. He said, I don't have any radio, I don't know what they got in mind.
Yeah.
We're going back up. So we went back up past the front, back into our lines.
Did it stop? Did the shooting?
Yeah, they stopped after 10 minutes. Because the guys turned back and got the hell out of Dodge, as I say.
Oh, God. Wow, that's amazing.
So I was very lucky. We spent so much time in not as restricted by being tied down to a foxhole or two,
Yeah.
or many patrols.
Did you lose any men during these?
No.
Oh, wow.
And then, right after I got sick, a couple of weeks later, they started the final assault into the Bow River Valley. And I was concerned because I figured I should be there.
What did you have when you got sick?
Hepatitis,
And how long were you away from your unit?
60 days.
60 days, 2
Yeah,
months.
2 months.
And so once you were done, once you had recovered,
They never considered me recovered until the blood values came in, and they never did.
they never did. So you didn't go back on the lines, front lines with
I
your...
went right up back home when the edict came down, about 60 days in the hospital.
So
But when I
you,
got home, I looked up the one fellow that I spent time with. His name was George Feckety. He was a fireman, professional firefighter in Connecticut. Found out where he lived, called him, and I flew up and we had lunch together.
oh, that's nice.
And the first question I asked him, how did our division, how did our
Yeah,
unit make out? He said, everybody made it through.
no
I
kidding.
said, great, because if I was there, I'd probably say turn right instead of left. And
So once you got ill, then you were home, then you got sent to the hospital, and then you were, once you
From then on, I was
recovered.
just getting back rubs.
How much longer, when was that when you got ill?
I got ill sometime around late February, March, something like
Of
that.
45?
60 days before May 10th.
Ah,
And then from there, when I was back in the States, May 20th, I was sent up to the hospital in Utica. And I was there until I was discharged on December 5th,
why so long?
because my
Because of-
values didn't come back.
Oh, the blood was still no good.
Yeah.
Wow.
But meanwhile, they took us out on the golf course, and I took some flying lessons while I was out there.
So you felt
And I felt great.
You did feel good.
Yeah, but
That's
they
good.
said, no, you're not going to take any chances.
No, that was all good for the
Yeah.
Army that they were
Yeah.
monitoring you.
Well, the war was over just as well.
Yeah. You don't know how, and did you find out other men got the same hepatitis type?
Only by reading a book. After I was at home, I bought the book about the operation of my regiment. That's where I found out that there were 120 guys, including me.
Did they ever find out? How did that happen?
And I never heard. I never tried to find out.
So you witnessed destruction when you were on the front lines like that? Were there home buildings being destroyed?
Not because we weren't moving forward in an attack.
I see.
We didn't have tanks because we were mountain. You had to walk on narrow trails. And the only German I saw was a mummified dead German. The first time we went up to the front, we were on these rounded hills, walk on a little trail that was very muddy because everybody had to go, including the mules. That's the only way we got supplies, with mule trains.
They carried your supplies
They
and
carried all our supplies.
you all walked?
We had to walk up. Only when we got to the bottom of the hills did we get on a truck to be trucked
Oh, I
back.
see.
Then it was 6 hours to get back to Florence and another hour to get up to Montecatini.
The trucks, when you went to Florence, you were driving in trucks or walking?
When we get to Florence, only coming back offline, we'd first have to come back down the hills to the valley and be loaded on the trucks there, and then down Highway 65.
Did you feel,
Pass.
go ahead.
We had winter, but it was a mild winter compared to Europe. I missed the horrible winter. If I'd stayed in France, I would have been in Battle of Bulge, absolutely sure, because they were looking for people to reform divisions that were beaten up. They put them in a quiet place in the Ardennes forest. That's where the attack came, and I would have been involved in that.
Wow. But because you got ill?
No, this is way before that.
Oh,
Because I was diverted to Italy.
oh, I see.
I had no choice about that. It was just a matter of luck.
Yeah, yeah. Very lucky.
Yeah.
How do you stay in touch in situations like that with family and friends? Could you?
Email. We'd get little pieces of mail that they would reduce to very small photographic
Oh,
results and then ship it back. They encouraged us to write all the time.
but were you allowed to say where you were or what you were doing?
I just say at the front,
Oh, you did?
yeah.
So your family
didn't-
knew?
Well, I sent 2 letters home, one to my father, who had been in the National Guard in World War I, but he never got into overseas. I told him what was really going on, and I told my mother how the sun was shining.
Oh, gee, what a good son. Wow,
My mother had got colitis while I was in the service.
wow. So you never were really off duty the whole time you were there? There was no time for R&R?
Yeah, yes.
Yes?
Every 5 weeks or so, they would take us offline,
Oh,
drive us by truck down to Florence and across to Montecatini, and you get about a week or so, a week or 10 days
oh, that's
There.
nice. What did you do there?
sleep, mostly.
Did you go to another army base, or
No,
where did you stay?
fancy hotels with no furniture
Oh,
and gorgeous terrazzo floors.
nice.
At first, we slept on the terrazzo floors on top of thin blankets.
Oh, gee.
Then they got us cots. That was really good stuff.
So did you have to pay for the hotel? No, the Army.
No, no,
The Army did. Good.
we had no reason to use money.
So where were you when the war ended?
Exactly when the war ended in Italy, I was in the hospital in Naples.
With the hepatitis?
Yeah. But I was feeling great.
Yeah, yeah,
But they held me because of my blood levels.
yes.
It was a type of disease that infected the liver,
Oh,
and it could get deadly in certain cases.
sure.
So they didn't want to take any chances.
And when you recovered from that,
When I was discharged from Rhodes General Hospital in Utica
right.
to the VA hospital in the Bronx.
Oh,
I'll never forget that,
why?
because I walked into this hospital and I got onto the floor and I looked around and I saw a guy, I thought they were from the Civil War. They were
Wow.
And I looked at the nurse and I said, I'm a civilian now. How long do I have to stay here? She said, well, 72 hours. After that, if you can leave at your leisure.
Ah,
You can sign out. But if you leave before that, you can't come back for 6 months, no matter what happens.
oh, funny. What?
So as soon as it said 72 hours,
You left?
I grabbed my stuff, took the train home.
Oh, nice.
My mother happened to find a doctor in the community who actually was doing research on hepatitis at that time. He put me on high protein amino acids, and no liquor, no alcohol, which was fine by me. I wasn't a drinker anyway.
And what you were already kind of cured by then?
Yeah,
So why was that necessary?
again, my
Oh, still?
blood tests were not showing up what they wanted.
Still? Wow,
Yeah.
that's a long time.
Yeah.
But eventually?
Eventually, they came back to normal.
Amazing.
Liver is a tough organ.
Yeah.
That's why I only have one.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have what you have. So how were you received by family and friends? They didn't know you were coming home then, or did they?
Yes, they did.
Oh, they did?
I had sent them, and I said, by the time you get this letter, they were there.
They were there. How was it adjusting to civilian life?
Not a problem at all.
Really?
I could have my malted milkshakes.
Did you go back to college, or what?
Yes, I finished my degree in engineering 3 more years.
Where did you do that?
Finished where I started, City College in
City
New
College.
York.
What kind of engineering?
Civil.
Civil. And adjusting to civilian life was okay?
Yes, I didn't have any mental problems that other people that had heavy combat. I was very lucky.
Did you remain in contact with any fellow veterans or reunite with any?
Only George Peckety that one time.
Now, are you a member of any veterans organizations now?
American Legion,
Oh, you are?
yeah.
Which post in Massapequa?
1066.
Uh-huh.
I'm not really active. I spent more time at the Air Museum.
Nice. As a docent there?
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So after you got your college degree, then what did you
I
do?
went into the family business. My father had formed a construction company putting up structural steel buildings, small bridges, and I latched onto that. That's why I took civil engineering.
He was probably very grateful and happy to have you join.
Oh, yeah, then he was out playing golf Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
And you did all the work. Very nice. Were you injured or at any time other than the hepatitis? Were you
Physically in the service, no.
No. So how do you feel your wartime experiences affected your life?
Everything else, but other people considered problems seemed very small compared to where I was, especially in that foxhole with the mortars falling all around.
Yeah.
I said,
Terrible.
I wasn't a very religious guy. I said, just this once, be good to me.
Oh. How long were you, how many times and how long were you in foxholes like that?
That was the one time,
Uh-huh. I mean, how long did it go on?
about 10 minutes. But then when we were in reserve, then we had to be careful. We had shells would drop in intermittently. We had movies. We'd had movies in a cave.
Still in Europe, when you were in
Yeah,
Europe?
in Italy.
Uh-huh. What are some life lessons you learned from military service, do you think?
our responsibility to do our job. We weren't fighting for the government. We weren't fighting for all the rights that people think. We were fighting for the guy next to us. Yeah, take care of him and he would take care of you.
Mm-hmm. How do you think your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
I think all people that are elected to public office should be forced to be in the service first.
That's a good point.
So they would know what it's like, and not just say, oh, it's so glorious, you send off these troops, they march out with bands playing, must be a great feeling. The hell it is.
Yeah. How old were you when you came back? Like 20?
20.
20. What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview?
I would like to think that all men of age 18 should have to go into the service for at least 1 year. It would teach them discipline, teach them that they're not the most important quantity in the world. You got to do what you have to do, because we have a bunch of people out there nowadays. I shrink to think of what it'd be like if they were drafted, whether they would be able to do what our generation did.
I don't think so. Yeah. Is there anything we haven't discussed or covered that you can think to add?
I don't think so. We don't get into politics, so.
No. No, better not. But thank you, Bob, so much for sharing all your experiences, and we really, really appreciate your service and all you did for us and our country.
People always say to me, thank you for your service, and I always say, I had no choice.
But you could have done things to get out of it, and
Yeah.
you were there protecting all of us.
Actually, all my friends had already gotten into the service. The ones I knew ended up in the Air Corps,
Oh, yeah.
in the ground, doing work on the ground, repairs, not flying. And I was the only one that got into a difficult position.
Yes. Wow. That's interesting. Anything else? Do you think we covered most of what you'd like to share?
The next war will not involve the kind of combat that we were used to.
It's true.
Somebody's going to push a button and a missile is going to go off.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very sterile situation.
Pretty scary. I mean, war in any situation is pretty scary.
As bad as people talk about, why did we have to drop the atomic bomb on the Japs? We had to save lives by doing that. It was the only decision we could make.
Yeah. It's true. Well, thank you so much, Bob. Thank you very much for
My pleasure.
explaining and sharing.